I never thought I'd be posting here, but I'm at my wit's end and could use some advice. Buckle up because this is going to be a wild ride. I'm John, 34M, and I just found out that my wife Sarah, 32F, has been cheating on me with my own brother, Mike, 30M. The kicker? I discovered this on our wedding day. Yeah, you read that right. Fucking wedding. Sarah and I have been together for 5 years, engaged for 1. Things seemed perfect, or so I thought. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing major. At least, that's what I believed until yesterday when my entire world came crashing down around me. Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. Sarah had been acting weird for the past few months, always on her phone, being vague about her plans, and coming home late from work meetings. But I trusted her completely. I mean, who suspects their fiancé of cheating with their own brother, right? Mike had always been the wild child of our family. He was constantly in and out of jobs, relationships, and even had a brief stint in jail for a DUI. When he showed up at our engagement party last year, clean-cut and sober, I was thrilled. Sarah suggested we let him be the best man as a show of support for his recovery. I thought it was a great idea at the time. God, I was so fucking naive. The wedding was set for a beautiful venue just outside the city. Everything was perfect, the flowers, the music, the guests all dressed up. I was nervous but excited, waiting at the altar for Sarah to walk down the aisle. That's when things started to go sideways. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2 p.m. sharp. By 2:15, there was still no sign of Sarah. The guests were getting restless and I was starting to sweat bullets. That's when I noticed Mike was missing too. I tried calling Sarah's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with Mike's. My stomach started to churn. I told myself they were probably just running late, maybe helping each other with last-minute preparations. But deep down, a nagging voice was telling me something was very, very wrong. At 2:30, I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself and headed to the bridal suite, ignoring the concerned looks from our families. As I approached the door, I heard muffled voices. Sarah's laugh, the one that usually made my heart skip a beat, now made it drop to my feet. Because mixed with her laughter was a deeper, masculine chuckle that I recognized all too well. I stood there, frozen, my hand on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to burst in, to confront them. Another part wanted to run away, to pretend I hadn't heard anything. But I knew I had to face whatever was behind that door. With a deep breath, I turned the knob and pushed the door open. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. There was Sarah, still in her wedding dress, straddling Mike on the vanity chair. His pants were around his ankles, and her dress was hiked up. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even notice me at first. I must have made some kind of noise because suddenly they both looked up. Sarah's eyes widened in shock, and Mike scrambled to pull up his pants. The room fell into a sickening silence. "John," Sarah gasped, quickly climbing off Mike. "It's not. I can explain." I couldn't speak. My throat felt like it was closing up. I just stood there, staring at them, trying to process what I was seeing. My bride and my brother. On our wedding day. Mike, that piece of shit, had the audacity to say, "Bro, calm down. Let's talk about this." That's when something in me snapped. I lunged at Mike, my fist connecting with his jaw before I even realized what I was doing. We tumbled to the floor, a tangle of limbs and curse words. Sarah was screaming, begging us to stop. But all I could focus on was the rage coursing through my veins and the satisfying crunch of my knuckles against Mike's face. The commotion must have alerted the guests because suddenly the room was flooded with people. My dad and uncle pulled me off Mike, who was sprawled on the floor, blood trickling from his split lip. Sarah was sobbing hysterically, her mascara running down her face in black streaks. "What the hell is going on here?" my dad demanded, looking between us with a mixture of confusion and anger. I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. The words felt like acid in my throat. Instead, I just pointed at Sarah and Mike, my hand shaking. "We made a mistake," Sarah whimpered, trying to straighten her dress. "John, please, can we talk about this privately?" The audacity of her request made me want to laugh and vomit at the same time. "Talk?" I roared. You want to talk after I just caught you fucking my brother on our wedding day? A collective gasp went through the room. My mom let out a strangled cry, while Sarah's parents looked like they'd been slapped. Mike just sat there, not meeting anyone's eyes, blood dripping onto his wrinkled dress shirt. Everyone out, I said, my voice eerily calm. Except you two, I added, glaring at Sarah and Mike. You're going to explain what the fuck is going on, and you're going to do it now. As the room cleared out, I could hear the murmurs and whispers of our guests. Great, I thought bitterly, at least they'll have something to gossip about at the reception that isn't happening. I turned to face Sarah and Mike, who were standing awkwardly apart now, both looking anywhere but at me. The silence was deafening. I spat out, "I'm waiting for that explanation." Sarah spoke first, her voice trembling. It just happened. We didn't mean for it to. Bullshit. I cut her off. Things like this don't just happen, Sarah. How long has this been going on? They exchanged a guilty look that made my stomach turn. Mike cleared his throat. About 6 months, he mumbled. 6 months. Half a fucking year. While we were planning our wedding, picking out china patterns and arguing over seating charts, they were sneaking around behind my back. 6 months, I repeated, my voice hollow. And you still went through with the wedding? But why not just tell me? Sarah stepped forward, reaching out to touch my arm. I flinched away from her. We were going to end it, she said quickly. After the wedding. We realized it was a mistake and... Oh, so you thought you'd have one last fuck for old time's sake? I snarled. On our wedding day? In your goddamn wedding dress? Sarah flinched at my words, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't like that, John. We got carried away. The stress of the wedding, the emotions. It just happened. I laughed bitterly. You keep saying that. It just happened. Like you both tripped and somehow ended up having sex. Cut the crap, Sarah. You made a choice. Both of you did. I turned to Mike, who was still avoiding my gaze. And you. My own brother. How could you do this to me? Mike finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. I'm sorry, John. I never meant for this to happen. Sarah and we connected in a way I didn't expect. I know it's no excuse, but you're right, it's not an excuse. I cut him off. It's betrayal. Pure and simple. Sarah stepped between us, her mascara-stained face pleading. John, please. I love you. This was a mistake. We can work through this. We can go to counseling, take some time apart if you need it. But please, don't throw away our relationship over one stupid mistake. I stared at her, incredulous. One mistake? Sarah, you've been cheating on me for 6 months. With my brother. And you expect me to just forgive and forget? No, not forget, she said quickly. But forgive. People make mistakes, John. We're human. I made a terrible error in judgment, but I choose you. I want to marry you. I want to spend my life with you. I looked between them, feeling a mix of anger, disgust, and heartbreak. And what about you, Mike? Do you choose me too? The sarcasm in my voice was palpable. Mike shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. Look, bro, I know I fucked up. Big time. But Sarah's right, it's over between us. It was just the fling. A stupid, selfish fling. You're my brother, and I love you. I never meant to hurt you like this. I scoffed. You never meant to hurt me? That's rich. You've been screwing my fiancé for half a year, and you didn't think that would hurt me? What the hell did you think would happen? Sarah interjected, her voice taking on a defensive tone. John, please. We're trying to be honest here. We made a mistake, but we're owning up to it. Can't you see how sorry we are? Something in her voice set me off. Maybe it was the hint of impatience, like she expected me to just get over it already. Sorry? You're sorry? Well, that makes it all better then, doesn't it? Should we go ahead with the wedding now? Hey, everyone. They're sorry. Problem solved. Sarah's face hardened. There's no need to be sarcastic, John. We're trying to have an adult conversation here. I laughed incredulously. An adult conversation? About how you've been fucking my brother behind my back. About how you nearly went through with marrying me while carrying on this affair. Tell me, Sarah, how exactly should an adult react to that? Mike stepped forward, his hands up in a placating gesture. John, come on. We know we messed up. But we can fix this. We're family. I turned on him, my anger boiling over. Family? You want to talk about family? Family doesn't do this, mate. Family doesn't betray each other like this. As far as I'm concerned, you're not my brother anymore. The room fell silent after my outburst. Sarah and Mike exchanged glances, seemingly at a loss for words. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the gravity of the situation finally sinking in. Sarah was the first to break the silence. "John," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I know you're hurt and angry. You have every right to be. But please, don't make any rash decisions. We can work through this. I love you. I want to marry you." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I was ready to spend the rest of my life with. Now, she seemed like a stranger. "How can you say that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How can you stand there in your wedding dress, after what I just saw, and tell me you want to marry me?" Sarah's face crumpled. "Because it's true. What happened with Mike, it was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. But it doesn't change how I feel about you." Mike nodded vigorously. "She's telling the truth, bro. It was just physical between us. Sarah loves you." I held up a hand, silencing them both. "Just stop. I don't want to hear any more of your excuses or justifications. You don't get to decide how I should feel about this." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I need you both to leave." I can't. I can't even look at you right now." Sarah's eyes widened in panic. "Jono, please, we need to talk about this. We can't leave things like this." I felt a surge of anger rise in me again. "We can't leave things like this? Should we have discussed it before or after you cheated on me? Before or after you almost married me while carrying on with my brother? When exactly would have been a good time for you, Sarah?" Sarah flinched at my words, but her expression quickly changed from hurt to defiant. "You know what, John? Maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe if you had been more attentive, more passionate, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Are you seriously trying to blame me for your cheating?" She tossed her hair back, a gesture I once found endearing but now seemed calculated. "I'm just saying, relationships are a two-way street. You're not completely innocent here." Mike looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, maybe we shouldn't?" "No, Mike," she cut him off. "John needs to hear this. You were always so focused on your work, John. Always too tired for date nights, always checking your phone during dinner. What was I supposed to do?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Oh, I don't know, Sarah. Maybe talk to me? Suggest couples therapy? Literally anything other than screwing my brother?" She rolled her eyes. "Please. Like you would have listened. You never listen." I felt a cold rage settling over me. "You know what? You're right. I'm not listening anymore. Get out. Both of you." Mike started to protest, but I held up my hand. I said, "Get out. I'll deal with the guests. You two can slink away like the snakes you are." Sarah's face contorted with anger. "Fine. Have it your way. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've thrown away." She stormed out, her wedding dress swishing angrily behind her. Mike lingered for a moment. "Tonight, save it," I snapped. "Just go." As the door closed behind them, I sank to the floor, my head in my hands. How had my wedding day turned into this nightmare? I don't know how long I sat there on the floor, my mind reeling from everything that had just happened. The sound of a gentle knock on the door snapped me back to reality. "John?" It was my dad's voice. "Son, can I come in?" I couldn't find my voice to respond, but the door creaked open anyway. My dad stepped in, his face a mix of concern and sorrow. He sat down next to me on the floor, not saying anything for a while. Finally he spoke. "Your mom's talking to the guests. We've told them there's been a situation and the wedding is off." I nodded numbly. "Thanks, Dad." He put his hand on my shoulder. "Do you want to talk about it?" I laughed bitterly. "What's there to talk about? My fiancé cheated on me with my brother. On our wedding day. It's like a bad soap opera." Dad sighed heavily. "I'm so sorry, son. I can't even imagine what you're going through right now." We sat in silence for a few more minutes before I found the courage to ask, "Did you know? Did anyone know?" He shook his head firmly. "No, John. We had no idea. If we had, He trailed off, his jaw clenching. I nodded, feeling a small relief that at least my parents hadn't been complicit in this betrayal. What am I supposed to do now, Dad? I asked, hating how small and lost my voice sounded. My dad squeezed my shoulder. Right now? You don't have to do anything. Well, handle the guests, sort out the venue. You just take care of yourself. Everything else can wait. For the first time since I walked in on Sarah and Mike, I felt tears stinging my eyes. I really did. I know, son, he said softly. I know. The next few hours passed in a blur. My parents took charge, explaining the situation to the guests in vague terms and apologizing for the abrupt cancellation. I stayed hidden away, unable to face the pitying looks and whispered conversations I knew were happening. As evening fell, the venue emptied out. My mom found me sitting alone in what was supposed to be the reception hall, surrounded by elaborate flower arrangements and place settings for a celebration that would never happen. John, honey, she said gently, we should go home now. I nodded numbly, allowing her to lead me out to the car. The drive home was silent, heavy with unspoken words and questions. When we got home, I headed straight for my old bedroom, grateful that ID decided to spend the night before the wedding at my parents' house. The thought of going back to the apartment I shared with Sarah made me physically ill. I collapsed onto the bed, still in my wedding suit, staring blankly at the ceiling. My phone had been buzzing nonstop with messages and calls, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it. What would I even say to people? A soft knock on the door roused me from my thoughts. My mom peeked in, holding a steaming mug. I brought you some tea, she said, setting it on the nightstand. I managed a weak smile. Thanks, Ma. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand resting on my arm. Do you want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not really. I can't believe this is happening. She nodded, her eyes filled with sympathy. I know, sweetheart. It's a terrible shock. But you're strong, John. You'll get through this. As she got up to leave, a thought struck me. I called out. What about Mike? Is he coming home? My mom's face hardened slightly. Your father and I have made it clear that he's not welcome here right now. He's staying with a friend. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and a strange, hollow ache. Despite everything, a small part of me still worried about my little brother. Try to get some rest, my mom said, closing the door behind her. But as I lay there in the dark, I knew sleep would be impossible. My mind kept replaying the day's events, torturing me with images of Sarah and Mike together. How had my life fallen apart so spectacularly in just a few hours? The next few days were a haze of canceled honeymoon plans, returned gifts, and awkward phone calls. I couldn't bring myself to look at social media, knowing it would be buzzing with speculation and gossip about what had happened. On the third day after the non-wedding, I finally worked up the courage to go back to my apartment. Sarah had texted saying she'd cleared out her stuff and left the key under the mat. Part of me was relieved I wouldn't have to see her, but another part felt robbed of the chance for a real confrontation. Walking into the apartment was like entering a time capsule. Everything was exactly as we'd left it the day before the wedding, excited and blissfully ignorant. Sarah's favorite mug still sat on the coffee table, a lipstick stain on the rim. A pile of wedding cards lay unopened on the kitchen counter. I moved through the rooms in a daze, noting the gaps where Sarah's things had been. The closet was half empty, her vanity cleared of makeup and perfumes. It was like she'd never existed, except for the gaping holes she'd left behind. As I reached the bedroom, something caught my eye. On the nightstand, next to the framed photo of us on our first vacation together, was an envelope with my name on it. Sarah's handwriting. My hands shook as I picked it up. For a long moment, I just stared at it, unsure if I wanted to read whatever justifications or excuses she'd written. But curiosity won out, and I tore it open. Dear John, it began. I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to. What I did was unforgivable, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I need you to know that I truly did love you. What happened with Mike, it wasn't about love. It was about excitement, about feeling wanted. I know that doesn't make it okay, but I hope it helps you understand. I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused you. You deserved so much better. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me, even if we can never be together again. I'll always care for you, John. Take care of yourself. Sarah. I read the letter twice, then crumpled it in my fist. Anger, hurt, and confusion swirled inside me. How could she claim to love me after what she'd done? And yet, a small, traitorous part of me ached to believe her, to forgive her. I sank onto the bed, letter still clutched in my hand, and for the first time since that awful day, I allowed myself to really cry. The days turned into weeks, and I found myself going through the motions of life on autopilot. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and taking on extra projects. Anything to keep my mind occupied and avoid the crushing loneliness of my apartment. My friends tried their best to help. They invited me out, offered to set me up on dates, but I couldn't bring myself to socialize. The thought of trying to explain my situation to someone new was exhausting. It was about a month after the wedding that wasn't when I got the call. Mike's number flashed on my screen, and for a moment, I considered ignoring it. But some morbid curiosity made me answer. John? Mike's voice was hesitant. I didn't think you'd pick up. What do you want, Mike? I asked, my voice flat. He cleared his throat. I wanted to talk. Face to face. I know I have no right to ask, but please, John, just hear me out. Every fiber of my being screamed to hang up, to cut him out of my life for good. But despite everything, he was still my brother. Fine, I said after a long pause. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., at O'Malley's. I chose the bar deliberately, a public place where I could leave easily if things got heated. The next evening, I arrived at O'Malley's to find Mike already there, nursing a beer at a corner table. He looked awful, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. Good, I thought bitterly. I sat down across from him, not bothering with a greeting. Mike took a deep breath. John, I fucked up. I know that. What I did to you, it's unforgivable. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed you to know how sorry I am. I stared at him, my jaw clenched. Sorry doesn't cut it, Mick. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. He nodded, his eyes downcast. I know. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did it. It doesn't excuse anything, but I think I was jealous. You've always had your shit together and I wanted to prove I could have something you had. I laughed humorlessly. So you decided to take my fiancé? President. I know, he said quickly. It's fucked up. I'm fucked up. But I'm trying to change, to be better. I miss my brother, John. I sat there, conflicting emotions warring inside me. Part of me wanted to punch him, part of me wanted to hug him, and part of me just wanted to walk away and never look back. I can't forgive you, I finally said. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I hear you. Mike nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. That's more than I deserve. Thank you for listening, John. As I left the bar, I felt a strange mix of emotions. The anger was still there, but alongside it was a tiny spark of something else. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe, just maybe, the first step towards healing. The meeting with Mike left me emotionally drained, but it also stirred something in me. For the first time since the wedding day disaster, I felt like I needed to confront my feelings head-on instead of burying them in work. I decided to take a week off, using some of the vacation days I'd accumulated for the honeymoon that never happened. I rented a small cabin in the mountains, away from the city and all its reminders of Sarah and our life together. The solitude was both comforting and terrifying. Without the distractions of work and daily life, I was forced to face the turmoil of emotions I'd been suppressing. Anger, betrayal, sadness, and even a confusing sense of loss, they all came crashing down on me. One evening, sitting on the cabin's porch with a beer in hand, I found myself thinking about Sarah's letter. Her words about excitement and feeling wanted echoed in my mind. Had I really been that neglectful? I thought back to our relationship, trying to see it objectively. It was true that I'd been working long hours, focused on advancing my career. But hadn't that been for our future? For the life we were planning together? I remembered canceled date nights, distracted conversations, and the gradual fading of the passion we once had. Maybe I wasn't entirely blameless in the breakdown of our relationship. But then I thought of Mike, my own brother, and the anger flared up again. No matter what issues Sarah and I had, nothing justified their betrayal. The image of them together on our wedding day still made me sick to my stomach. As the week progressed, I found myself writing in a journal at first, then on my laptop. I poured out all my thoughts and feelings, reliving the good times with Sarah, the shock of discovery, the aftermath. It was painful but also cathartic. By the time I was ready to return to the city, I felt, not healed, exactly, but more at peace. I had a clearer perspective on what had happened and, more importantly, on what I wanted for my future. I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment, surrounded by memories of Sarah. It was time for a fresh start. As I drove back to the city, I made a mental list of things to do. Find a new place, maybe look for a new job, and most importantly, start rebuilding my life on my own terms. The road ahead would be tough, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't okay yet, but I would be. Eventually. Back in the city, I threw myself into making changes. I found a new apartment across town, far from the neighborhood Sarah and I had lived in. It was smaller, but it felt like a clean slate. I repainted the walls, bought new furniture, and slowly started to create a space that was entirely my own. At work, I requested a transfer to a different department. My boss was understanding, having heard rumors about what happened. The new role was challenging, forcing me to learn new skills and meet new people. It was exactly the distraction I needed. I also started seeing a therapist. Initially, I was skeptical, but talking to an unbiased professional helped me process my emotions in a way I couldn't on my own. She helped me understand that it was okay to still have feelings for Sarah, even anger and longing, while also moving on with my life. One day, about 3 months after the wedding that wasn't, I ran into Sarah at a coffee shop. My heart raced when I saw her, a mix of pain and residual attraction coursing through me. "John," she said, her eyes wide with surprise. How are you?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm doing okay, Sarah. How about you?" She nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit I used to find endearing. "I'm all right. Working a lot. I heard you moved?" "Yeah," I replied, surprised by how calm I felt. "Needed a change of scenery." An awkward silence fell between us. There was so much unsaid, so much hurt and history. "John," she started, but I cut her off. "Sarah, I don't think there's anything left to say," I said gently. "What happened, it happened. We can't change it now." She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know. I'm sorry, John. For everything." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since that awful day. The woman I had loved, who I had planned to spend my life with. Now she was just Sarah. A person who had hurt me deeply, yes, but also someone who was clearly struggling with her own regrets. "I know you are," I said finally. "I hope you find happiness, Sarah. I really do." As I walked out of the coffee shop, my coffee forgotten, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. That chapter of my life was truly over. It was time to start writing a new one. As weeks turned into months, I found myself slowly but surely rebuilding my life. The pain of Sarah and Mike's betrayal was still there, but it had dulled from a sharp, constant ache to an occasional twinge. I started saying yes to social invitations again. At first, it was awkward. Everyone seemed to walk on eggshells around me, afraid to mention relationships or weddings. But gradually things normalized. I even found myself laughing genuinely at a friend's bachelor party, something I wouldn't have thought possible a few months ago. One Saturday, I decided to try out a new rock climbing gym that had opened up nearby. It was something I'd always wanted to try but never got around to. As I was fumbling with the harness, clearly out of my depth, a voice behind me said, "Need a hand with that?" I turned to see a woman with curly brown hair and an amused smile. "Is it that obvious?" I chuckled. "Only to someone who's been climbing for years," she replied, introducing herself as Emma. She helped me with my harness and gave me some beginner tips. We ended up climbing together that day, and I found myself enjoying her company. She was funny, down to earth, and passionate about her hobbies. At the end of the session, I surprised myself by asking if she'd like to grab coffee sometime. As I walked home that day, I realized something important. The pain of what Sarah and Mike did would always be a part of my story. But it didn't have to define my future. I was ready to start a new chapter, one climb at a time. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.